Okay. Mr. Carollo, are you there?
Art, I am here.
Hi, Bill. How
Thank
are you?
you. Good,
Thank you.
good. Well, you heard a little bit about me earlier, so I won't monopolize your time. These are really good sessions that you have in a smaller group, breakout session. um, And everyone respects each other. It's helpful for me to put some names and faces together within this clinic. So that's helpful for me. But I just think you learn so much from each other. No one has all the answers. So if you steal one or two things and how they handle a certain situation, invaluable. You never know when you really need it, being a leader, being a referee, as a leader, we put a lot of responsibility on you. We spend a lot of time on what is being a leader. It's not just the words or your position, it's your actions. So if you expect and hold your crew accountable for knowing the rules or mechanics or a mistake, you've got to pull that together, but you have to do it yourself too. As I said, being a leader, you actually have to do it yourself. You can't expect anybody in your crew to do more than what you're doing. And as a leader, you better be at least 2% more than everybody else on the crew. And you've got some young people that you can help, and you have to identify them, and maybe they're the next leader or backup leader for you. And so that, have some goals in mind this year as you go in. Maybe it's someone to move someone on your crew to the COC. Maybe it's to move someone to the next level, but be an advocate for that person. And that's a lot. And you've got the best people. You've got the best folks that understand referees. They did it just like you did it. They started at high school and worked their way up to the highest level in the NFL. Not all of us will make it there, but certainly you could be the best, in Division II. You can be best in Division III, be the best in the COC, whatever that level takes you to. And helping other ones and finding other people, to bring them in. I think that's great. I mean, he's worked with all my top people that, and Sean and Kendall and the rest have identified some young officials, and look where they're at today. So it does work, as long as you have a plan in place and put the work effort in there. So just great for me just to listen in and kick around some things with you guys. Thanks, Art.
Thanks so much for your time, and thank you for being here as well.
Great.
The next item on our agenda is with regards to effective game management. I know that was one topic that we wanted to review and discuss. Dave, did you want to lead the conversation with regards to effective game management?
Yeah, as soon as I unmute myself.
Right.
There we go. Hopefully everyone can see my screen. And once again, if you have a question, please go ahead and speak up or enter it in the chat, and we can talk about that as well. As Art and I were discussing what to show and how to prepare for this, both of us actually attended one of our first referee sessions for the upcoming fall season, and there was a really excellent presentation on efficient and effective game management. So both of us thought this would be great to go over today. So I'll narrate the first half of this presentation, which is more applicable to games without instant replay and maybe without television. And then I'll let the speakers talk about the second half that really have to deal with other aspects of efficient game management during the game. So as we start, I think as referees, we always kind of think about how the game flows. How does the game move? And we feel much better about our performance when we're able to look back on the game and realize that game just flowed. There was something about it. Our crew clicked. We knew what each other was thinking. We saw all the plays that we needed to. And how do we maybe understand when those games happen and when they don't? And a comment from our national coordinator for officiating, Steve Shaw, had a couple good quotes recently at our national referee meeting, is that quality fouls keep the game moving. People enjoy sports because players play. They don't necessarily enjoy sports when they know all of us on a first name basis. So as a crew chief, it's a message that we really cannot say enough to our crews. Focus on the quality fouls, get the big fouls. It's a record that needs to be repeated over and over again, but really focus on the quality fouls, the ones that everyone can call. Almost turn it into a self-officiated game, if you want to think about it that way. But that really helps keep the game moving. We need to get the ones that are there, but if we're stopping the game 20, 25 times for a flag, it really chops up the game, and probably we suffer as a part of that. The other quote is that field presence and game management have never been as important as now. And I think we all can understand on a Friday night or Saturday that how we manage the game, how we manage the players, we can do a lot more than just throwing our flag to control the game and to manage the situation. We always can walk up to a player and have a short conversation with him that really deflates the tension, that really kind of brings it back into perspective that we're playing a game, and we can move on to the next play. You're helping the player move on. You're helping yourself move on when you take the time to have those conversations with individuals and just manage the situation. Both Bill Carollo and John Perry talked about focus on things that you can control and things that you can't. And as a crew chief, it's, I think, very important to stress with our crews when things we can't control, not to worry about it and to move on, because sometimes we all get hung up on those things. Things we can't control in a game is the style of the game, how cleanly it is played, how many times the clock stops because of an incomplete pass or plays it in out of bounds. Sure, in a high school game, we would love for our games to be right around that 2-hour mark, 2 hour, 15 minutes. And those seem to run a little bit better. However, if a team just is not throwing the ball well, or the clock is stopping a lot because the teams want to take all 12 of their timeouts, it's going to add to the game time. Game time itself is not an indicator we had a good game. But when we look back on it, we can try to think about, did we do our part to keep the game moving? How many injuries are in the game? Whether they're real or not. To us, it doesn't matter, but certainly the more injuries, the more interruptions can add to that. But those are things we just can't control. So try not to focus too much on that or worry about it. Things that we are able to control, and what we should stress to our crew before, during, and not forgotten after the game, is how efficient do we enforce penalties? Efficiency really could mean several things. It's not strictly just, did we complete this false start penalty in under 30 seconds or some amount of time? But it's having a self-evaluation and having your crew think about, did we enforce the fouls quickly, efficiently, and easily for the ones that are straightforward? Everyone knows what a false start is. Everyone knows what an offside is or encroachment is for the defense. Did we take more time than was needed? That's really the one question you need to ask yourself. For other fouls, for fouls that you do have, or plays that you do have 2, maybe 3 fouls in a game, or involves a change of possession, those are going to take more time. And as a referee, sometimes you have to maybe ignore that efficiency mindset on the complicated ones. Those are only 1 a game, maybe 2, but tell your crew, let's take that extra 20 seconds, extra 30 seconds to get it right, as opposed to just doing it quickly and then forgetting about the rules and all that. So for the ones that we can be efficient, be efficient. Is our crew going to the right spots? But for the ones that take a little bit more time, give it the time that it needs. Separate players on scuffles. Give them an opportunity to handle it themselves. And if we need to, then yes, we can flag it. Getting teams onto the field after an interruption. Do your timeouts take a minute, or do they take 1 minute 45 seconds because we're slow getting the huddles back into the middle of the field? The more efficient we are with that, the quicker our games can move on. And when the ball is in play, that's usually better for everybody. and establishing a consistent tempo. I believe in Michigan, the high school now went to the 40-second clock, at least in most conferences. That's a great rule change for referees, because we don't have to have a ready for play whistle every play. But what we can do there is, at least, is the ball toward the middle of the field at about a consistent time. We try to aim for having the ball on the ground between 28 and 32 seconds every play. Sometimes it's going to be longer, sometimes it's going to be shorter or quicker. But at least if a large majority of our plays are within that 28 to 32 second range, we know we're doing a good job. Pre-games. How we handle our pre-games can help our efficient game management. Every referee is a little bit different as far as how much maybe statistics or scouting to do before the game. I know some officials love to know a lot of statistics. Some officials love to know play tendencies and who are the best players. Other officials like to be a little bit more fresh and not to go in with certain thoughts that certain players can play on the edge. Both can work. So as a crew chief, you need to kind of have an understanding with your crew what works best. So I certainly encourage you to try multiple methods and multiple approaches as far as what is the right amount of scouting for you and your crew. Certainly, I think if your crew knows, does your team or in the game that you're going to have, is it expected to be a run heavy team or run heavy game or a pass heavy game? That certainly can help you focus on the important parts of that game. Is the game going to be decided between the tackles because you have two wing T offenses? You don't need to spend much time on pass interference, as an example, to prepare for that. But you do need to spend more time on pinching in, closing down, and focusing on the action that really needs to be focused on the line of scrimmage. That can be pretty important. You do want to anticipate your best players. Who are the playmakers for each team, both on offense and who on defense? So we focus a lot on maybe running backs and receivers, but let's not forget in defensive ends or linebackers that are doing really well, because that's where the offense is going to focus. And you might notice that if the offense is going to foul, it's because it's against those defensive players that are just that good. And then video review. Now is a great time in the off season to do a lot of video review. And I know with more and more film available during the season, that certainly helps. As a crew chief, involve your whole crew. It is not just your responsibility to manage the film or pick 5 plays a week to talk about. Assign that to different members of your crew. That's definitely going to help. It can, maybe it just rotates every week. One person picks 5 plays from the last game, and then you can talk about it in the week ahead. It's a simple but yet important method of crew preparation for each game. All right. As I said, yep.
Yep. There was a question as well that was provided in the chat box. I didn't know whether or not you wanted to take that question right now.
Sure.
And pretty much it was from Jeff. And he wanted to know, do you have a suggestion as to how to learn to work with game film in order to highlight certain plays? In other words, how to be a film tech in addition to be a crew chief. That's a loaded question, right?
That is a loaded question. And we're all at different levels on that. If you can, find yourself a good a tech person to learn from. And that's the part about finding good mentors too. It's not just about how am I better at roughing the passer calls, or how am I better at watching certain blocking action. Some of the stuff that we need help with is off the field, and how do I become better with breaking down film or highlighting film. So that's always a suggestion, because that's an area I think we all can always learn from, is how to be better, and all that. And a lot of it does just take practice, on your own time. Spend time in the film format that you have, and practice setting together a playlist, practice going through a presentation on the playlist. Some of the film management software has some very, I think, cool and helpful telestration features and ways that you can highlight players, and just practice on your own time. That'd be my advice.
And I do have a suggestion as well, Jeff. So one of the things that I do after all my games is that I do spend a lot of time reviewing my film, just to see what I've done incorrectly, what I did well, and areas I can improve on. So from each game, I take a rose. That's my good. I take a thorn. That's my bad. And I take my my bud, and that's something I need to improve on. So each game, I take the time to review all my plays. Also, I review what other people did as well, and then we also provide constructive criticism to our peers as well. And that criticism is more to help us get better, and not to insult or be critical of others. Is there to just to learn from and get better. Hopefully, Jeff, did that answer your question, or is there any other questions you had or any other follow-ups? Okay, thanks, Jeff. Okay, go ahead, Dave.
All right, I will let this recording play here, so hopefully the sound and everything comes through.
Sure, sometime. I had a crewmate a couple years ago start the year out by really
is the sound coming through on that?
Hey, the clock is not our friend when we go out on the field.
Yes,
on a Saturday afternoon, and that's absolutely the truth. The quickest way to a crew downgrade is to screw up a clock situation. Clock needs to be running when it should be running, needs to be off when it should be off. Just had a crew call with my guys earlier this week, and talked a little bit about what makes a referee comfortable. One of the things that makes us comfortable, we have to set it out there as an absolute expectation of our crew, is that when we're done with a penalty enforcement, we turn around in the field, we see 7 guys preferably giving us the same signal: wind it, stop it. I've also reinforced to my back judge that, hey, I want it from everybody, but I need it from you. He's the easiest guy to see. He's standing right in front of us. I imagine that everybody's kind of in the same boat with what our expectations are of the crew. The best thing to do to make sure that we get that is to reinforce it early, and then to hold people accountable. I had a boss years ago that pointed out, if you don't establish the expectations of the people that are working for you, there's no way to hold them accountable. Starting with the expectations early is important. With regard to the kicking game, anytime we end up with a fair catch or a catcher that catches the ball and goes directly to the ground, those are the gotchas that happen with the kicking game. In one situation, if it's a fair catch and we lose a second, that's an easy one to pick up. We need to make sure that we get the second put back up. And conversely, if we end up with a situation where a guy catches the ball and goes to the ground fairly quickly thereafter, I need to make sure that the right amount of time comes off the clock in those situations. Like both John and Matt have mentioned, I'm not real big on a lot of chatter with the 0-2-0, but one thing that I have found really helps me, in particular on free kicks, just prior to the ball being kicked, I like to get confirmation from the center judge on the number of the kicker, just so that when we do end up with that kick out of bounds, once in a while, once in a blue moon, that announcement comes out really quickly and accurately. Kickoff out of bounds, kicking team number 38, balls will be placed at the 35-yard line, first down. Makes it sound like we've practiced it and know what's coming. That number coming through the 0-2-0 just before the kick is a good reminder what that is. And the other thing that I like to get through the 0-2-0 is time on the clock, 6:38, whatever it is, just as a reminder that when the play is over, we end up with one of those situations and look up and it's was a fair catch and the clock says 6:37, just helps in reminding us that, hey, we just lost a second for no reason. Let's make sure that we get that back. So those are two things that I want to hear through the O2O. Certainly not a lot of chatter there, but those two things I think add value to the way that
Is Dave still there? Can anyone hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you. Art, looks like Dave dropped off.
Okay. No problem. Not certain what happened to him, but were there any questions or any concerns with regards to the presentation that Dave was just sharing? Okay.
The O2O, I'm assuming, is that like the communication system?
Yes, the
Okay.
O2O is a communication system between the on-field officials and also instant replay. It is pretty much is a walkie-talkie, whereas though we can communicate throughout the course of the game.
Got it. Thank you.
No problem. Okay. I'll just give them a second. In the interim, I do have a presentation that I wanted to share with you regarding.
Hey, Art, if we want, we can probably take a 5-minute break, and then
Okay.
I don't know if you guys have taken one already, but you can take like maybe a 5-minute break and then jump back into it, give folks a second to stretch out, go to the bathroom or whatever, and then jump back into it.
Certainly. You want to come back at? Go ahead. I'm sorry, Sean.
No, go ahead.
You want to come back at 10:30? I'm sorry, 11:30 Eastern.
Yeah, and then I'll reach out to Dave and see what happened.
Okay.
Okay.
He's texting me now too. Okay.
Oh, perfect.
Okay. No problem. So we reconvene at 11:30. All right, Dave, you back?
Yeah, that was weird.
All right, no problem. So we went on break until 11:30, and then we can go into the I can go into the effective game. I mean the presentation, my presentation next.
Sure.
Sure. Okay.
Mhm.
Okay, I think it's 11:30. I think everyone is getting back. Dave, did you have any items or any issues or concerns that you wanted to address? I know that you didn't go through the whole presentation that you wanted to go through, but did you have any items that you wanted to review or discuss before you dropped off?
Yeah, sorry about that, everyone. Technical difficulties, obviously. But I guess that's part about being a crew chief too, is handling the unexpected. And that's going to happen no matter how well you prepare. It's also embracing the challenges of the game and what happens, and doing so with a good attitude. Because your crew is going to feed off of you. So if they see that you're upset, if you're angry, and you might be, but you have to at least have the demeanor that you got things under control, because if you do, then your crew is going to resonate off of that attitude. And that's how you get the crew back in shape. So that's just a good comment on there. I think one topic that was covered in that presentation that we didn't get to is how you handle coaches, and is the rapport that your crew has with the coaches, not just with the sideline officials, but you yourself. And a good comment that I heard at a clinic a few years ago was, if you approach every game and with the intent to try to have a good relationship with the coaches in an effort really to help them out, that is going to lead more to positive interactions with all the coaches that you'll have. If your true intent is to have a good relationship, so meaning it's not adversarial, even though at times it will be, but if your intent is to really have a good relationship with the coaches, from the time you meet them before the game and then during the game, that's going to help out your crew more than anything, because then you can build that rapport from game to game, week to week, and season to season in some cases. So I think that was one point I wanted to make sure is mentioned from that PowerPoint.
Certainly, and Dave, I'm not certain your experience with dealing with coaches. For me, as far as communication prior to the game, I make sure that I do introduce myself prior to the game. Throughout the course of the game and timeouts, I do make sure that the coach is fine, see whether or not he has any questions or any concerns from the previous plays. That allows us to build the confidence in the coach that we are in control of the game. In between quarters, I also make sure that I do have a conversation with the coach, and I ask him whether or not he's okay. He'll either give me the thumbs up or we'll have a conversation. I'll try to address his questions or concerns quickly. Are there any other tools or any other comments that you wanted to suggest with regards to effective communication with coaches?
A lot of it's being yourself. We all have different styles of our own personality and how we work well with our family, how we work well with our coworkers. Apply those same principles for you. Just because someone is very good with maybe humor on a sideline or with a coach, and maybe you don't have that same gift of a sense of humor, doesn't mean you have to try that. You have to be comfortable within your own skin and what works for you in your communication style, and embrace it. Even if that means you might be a little awkward, or it might be more of a natural thing for you. However it is, work with what suits you best, and that's going to put you in the better opportunity for success.
Yeah, absolutely right. I think one of the most important things that I learned was just to be myself. Throughout the first couple of years, I wasn't as comfortable as I could have been, and I just had to sit back and just learn things from my mentors and start being myself and not try to be anyone else. So I think we have most of the group back. Is there any other questions or any other concerns so far that the group may have? Okay. I'll start sharing my screen. Okay, hopefully everyone can see my screen. Can you see my presentation?
Yes.
Okay. One of the lessons I learned was that I was taking things for granted, and as a result, I was failing as a leader. The most important thing that I've learned my first year in the COC was that I need to be a better leader. I had to define more concrete goals and more concrete definitions and requirements of the crew. One of the things that I just took everything for granted. Me being a rookie, I felt as though everyone else wasn't a rookie and everyone else knew more than I did. And I didn't feel the need to explain to them what to do. However, it was the reverse. You do have to let the crew know expectations. This presentation is based off of that. One of the questions that was sent throughout the week was that, what do you do during your pregame? And give me an example of something that you do. So this presentation is something that I do share with the crew early in the season, just to let them know what is expected. So we do know, and just the first thing I do is just talk about assuming and what assuming is. So we break it down, just the definition of assuming. We all know that. And then as a result, we do know what happens, and we all heard this expressions before, what happens when we assume. You can make a donkey out of you and me, all right? The assumption also relates to our game day assistants. For example, we cannot take them for granted. We do need the chain crew, we need the ball boys, and we need the clock operators. I'm not certain who's on this call who have ever experienced a failure between these three, but I have. For the chain crew, we cannot assume that the chain crew knows not to move, right? We have to let them know. We have to have that conversation. Our wing officials and our deep officials, they have to have that conversation before the game to let the chain crew know what their expectations are. Often we hear from chain crews that, I'm experienced, I've been here for the last 10 years, I know what to do. And then the first play of the game, we have a long run, and then we have a penalty and the box move. I think we all have been there through that situation. So we have to provide them guidance. We have to advise them what to do. We can't take it that they know how to operate the chain clip as well and how to operate the chains correctly. So throughout the pregame, that hour that we're there early on the field, make sure you have that conversation with the chain crew. Make sure that you put in your pregame outline or your expectations to your wing officials, what time you want to have the wing officials meet with the chain crew. And if you look up, hey, it's 12:15, you don't see the chain crew or you don't see your referees talking to them, make sure you give them a friendly talk. Hey guys, just wanted to know whether or not you talk to the chain crew. The ball boys. Often we have issues with ball mechanics. The ball may be coming in from the incorrect side. We have incorrect amount of balls on the home side compared to the visitor side. As a result, it slowed down our game. We have to have a conversation again with the ball boys, where to stand, where the officials are going to look for them at the end of each down. We have to explain the importance of their role to the game and how effective it is. We often see issues underneath 2 minutes, whereas though the ball boy may be trying to throw in an extra ball when we're using the same ball on the field. Throughout the course of the game, we may receive the home team ball, but the visiting team is on offense. So these are items that you want to have that conversation with the ball crew, just to let them know their expectations. Game clock operators. For me, I know that I ask my crew to make sure that the game clock operators are sent the instructions prior to us getting to the game site, so that when we have that conversation at the game site, is a quick review. Often the game clock operator may state, hey, I've been working here for 30 years and they know how to function the clock. And then all of a sudden we have a kickoff and the clock didn't start. Or we have a out of bounds play and the clock is still running and we're winding in the clock and the clock is incorrect. So we need to have that conversation with our game clock operators when to start and when to stop the clock. They also need to know when I put one hand up in the air, what that means compared to putting two hands up in the air. So I'm asking them to please reset the game clock to, the play clock to 25 or 40 seconds. Also, throughout the course of the game, we may have clock adjustments. I need to make that announcement across the PA system to let them know that we need to reset the game clock. Another item of concern for me was that during the change of quarters, we just talked about it briefly, as far as making sure that I had that conversation with the coaches. But as far as wing officials, they can make sure that that coach is fine or see what concerns he may have prior to me getting over there. Also, we do take for granted that we need to know what down and distance in the yard the ball is on before we move that ball. Make sure that we are writing that information down. And then also as a follow-up, make sure that the clock is set and the chain is set correctly. The next item I had, I know that somebody asked a question with regards to penalty reporting. Assume that the referee doesn't know anything. Most of the time, as a referee, I don't know the result of the play. So when gathering information, I would need to know what is the result of the play. I also need to know, we need to know what everyone has on a penalty. So when it comes to penalty enforcement, often what happens if the referee has a flag for roughing a passer or whatever it may be, he doesn't do a good job of communicating to his other officials what penalty he has. So as a result, our deep officials don't know that information. So make sure that we share that information to the other officials so that they can communicate it to coaches. So far, is there any questions on anything that I mentioned so far? Okay. All right, so as far as penalty reporting, for me, in order to do an effective announcement, I need the following information. I do it in as far as the when, during the run, what was the foul, what, holding, who, offense, which number, 33, and what was the result of the play. That allows me to go into an effective announcement during the run, holding, offense, number 33, that 10-yard penalty is enforced from the previous spot or from the spot of the foul. Without those details, I will most likely not give you a good announcement back. So the reporting cadence to me is the most important thing to make sure that we look good. And then also, as far as penalty enforcement and penalty reporting, the last thing that I do require is that all officials give me the clock status. In order to give me the clock status, they have to know what the foul was and so forth. Also, when it comes to penalty reporting, in my mind, there's only a couple of teams. There's the offensive team and there's a defensive team. There's the kicking team and there's the receiving team, passing team or intercepting team, fumbling team or recovering team. Officials should not come over and say to me, I had a hold on the red team, number 27. In the event that they do that, I have to slow them down and ask them, who was the hold on? Offense. and they need to provide me the correct information in order for me to give an effective announcement. Again, with regards to penalty administration, we have to make sure that everyone knows what the foul is. Everyone knows the spot of the enforcement. The umpire and the center judge will enforce the penalty accurately. And also, most importantly, question yourself. Am I the only one questioning the enforcement? I must be wrong. No, you could be right. So if you have any question or concern, make sure that you voice your opinion to the other officials out there on the field. If need be, stop everyone and state, crew, I think we're making an error. I have a concern on the enforcement. I think that was a spot foul instead of enforcement, a previous spot enforcement. Some things that you can think about. I think earlier we did discuss concentration with John Perry. He provided that, hey, we must focus and concentrate throughout the course of the game. We need to come up with a pre-snap routine for every type of play. For a kick play, we should have a pre-snap routine. For a pass and run play, we need to have a pre-snap routine. For if we get inside the 20-yard line, inside the 10-yard, we need to have a pre-snap routine for every type of play that we have. If we do take one play off, that would be the play where something happens and we can't provide information and we're not doing our job effectively. So we need to do a better job of concentrating for 60 minutes of a ball game. For me, I know that my concentration broke down a lot, whereas though at halftime, I would go and I would eat the incorrect food. I would go and eat a sugary snack, things like that. So instead of eating sugary snacks at halftime or before the game, I make sure that I eat proper nutrition as far as fruit, energy bars, granola bars, things like that, more healthy snacks, a protein shake, anything else than sugar, because I was noticing that I would do good for the first 5-10 minutes of the half, and then after that it's all downhill. So I try to make sure that energy is up throughout the whole half. As far as communication, I think we have to do a good job of communicating. Again, one thing for me, I asked my back judge to provide the clock status after all stoppages. I asked the crew to confirm all downs, especially after penalty administration. And in doubt, shut it down. If something seems wrong, shut it down. It's easier for us to shut it down than to start a first down play on second down, or not have the proper down. If needed, pull someone off of a bad call. I have no offense. I don't take it personal if you pull me off of a roughing the passer call and you feel as though it wasn't roughing the passer, or if you feel as though I called a hold and it was not a hold. All right, you didn't see that correctly. I felt as though there was not enough of material restriction throughout the course of the play, and therefore I should pick up my flag. If you come to me with that information, then definitely I have to take it off, in my opinion. And also encourage other officials to get more involved throughout the course of the game and provide support where needed. Again, just following up on communication, our calls have to be big. We have to make sure that we are calling calls that have an effect on the game. We don't want to call the small fouls. We want to make sure that they're big. Again, we also talked about preventive officiating, and the officiating has to make sense for the game, right? So preventive officiating means that we have to do a good job of talking to coaches, do a good job of talking to players. We're just not out there to be an authority figure. We're out there to make sure that we're managing the game, make sure that we're having that conversation with number 23 on the defense. Hey, number 23 on the defense, I seen that hit. You may want to take it down a little bit. I thought it was pretty close to hand, hands to the face, or something like that. And they'll respond to that. They'll say, oh, thanks, coach. Thanks, referee. I appreciate you. And that also lets the offense know that you are observing the action as well. So we definitely want to we want to communicate effectively and efficiently. Again, we did briefly talk about communication between officials and coaches. One of the most important things that we could do is provide preliminary signals. The preliminary signal lets everyone know what call we have, and also allows the referee to slow down, process the information, get decisions before he make an announcement. Also, one of the big things is that for me is that after a kickoff, we waste a lot of time sometimes if we don't know where to put the ball at when a kickoff. So make sure we had a conversation with our deep wings to understand, and our short wings to understand where we want to place the ball after a free kick. That was my presentation about assuming. Are there any questions or any concerns with regards to that presentation? Okay.
Yeah, hey, Art, this is Gary.
Yes.
I was just going to add one thing to help improve the communication between officials and the coaching staff, especially, let's say, if we had something like holding or pass interference. I try to train my wing officials, like, for example, if there's a holding call, to put it in a bucket list. So if he tells me he's got a hold and restrict or a pullover, or a player's being tackled and he reports that to me, I know he's communicating. Then I'm going to ask him to communicate that to the coach. And if somewhere down the line the coach wants to speak to me as the referee, I find I've already know how he's categorized it. It just reinforces what my partner called. And that would certainly work really effective, I think, with pass interference calls like early contact or a hold and restrict. It's just something I found out that works out really well. It just takes a little time to develop. Yeah, obviously, if you're working with a new official, but it really helps me out as a referee. Just a suggestion.
No, that's a good point. Definitely, we do want to get the category of the foul, and make sure that that information is shared with the coaches as well, if need be. And also, when we evaluate ourselves after the end of the game, we do have to fill out a foul report. And on that foul report, if there was a hold, for example, we have to put in there holding offense number 23 or number 72, grab and restrict at the point of attack. So that definitely helps the referee in the event that he has to provide or enter the foul report into Quick Ref. Thanks, Gary, so much.
Hey, Art, great session. I loved it. I got a lot of information out of this. Now, moving forward, is there any way we can get this? I know it's being recorded. Is there any way I can go back and look at it again if I had to?
I'm going to send this out to you, Ronald. If you want me to, I'll send this out to the 19 participants. I sent that email out earlier.
Yes.
If that's fine with you. And it also at the end of the session, if you have, no problem. If you have any questions or concerns, just let us know. I will definitely also provide you my phone number, and Dave will provide you his phone number as well. And you may contact us at any time. One of the big things is that we have to get back, and we have to help you get better to take our positions. Mm-hmm.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate it.
No problem. No problem.
Yeah, same certainly goes for me. Feel free to reach out at any time. And I believe the committee is planning on sending all of these recordings out to the entire list. So you can look at all the breakouts and all the other sessions from this morning.
Okay.
Any other questions? Any other concerns about pregame before we go to our next topic? Okay. Dave, you got it? You ready?
Yeah. One of the topics that was recommended prior to the clinic here was goal line mechanics, both coming out from the end zone and then going in. So here's a good play just to talk about some of our mechanics and what we are thinking about coming out of the end zone. So the ball is snapped at about the 9-yard line or so. And let's think about a couple things. First of all, positioning. And this is a high school film. So the advantage of this is, it's a great example of what most of us see on Friday nights. We get one angle just from the press box. So always a great idea when you rewatch your games and you see the quality of the film. It really kind of emphasizes how big the actions need to be for it to be a foul. You're not necessarily officiating to game film. You're using game film to help you understand what really affects a play. Subtle difference, but it's pretty important to underscore. So as a referee, in this case, I think it's always a great idea whenever the ball is snapped inside the 15, at least that's what I use, is to line up a little bit wider than I normally would. In some cases, that will allow me to start on the goal line or near the goal line. Now, when the ball is snapped at the 9, I wouldn't recommend lining up on the goal line because that's too tight. It's too close. You still want to maintain somewhat of your normal view. However, I would be wider than I normally would from the ball snapped at the 9. Obviously, we are the only official that will be able to rule on anything in the end line. So if the quarterback scrambles too far backwards, we're the only one there. For the goal line, we might have help from our line of scrimmage officials. They may recognize that the goal line is threatened and be able to work back and help rule on that. However, we also have to have in our mind, the goal line might be a ruling we have to provide input on or make the ruling ourselves. So standing a little bit wider can help, but also what is some of our philosophy on making a ruling of a safety? And I'll just ask that to everybody. Are we looking to make a ruling of a safety, or are we going to try to put the ball in the field of play? Does someone want to take that answer?
I would say you always want to try to keep that ball in the field of play.
Exactly.
You want to make sure momentum, and if there's, exactly when that quarterback's hit, where he is, and so on and so forth. So
exactly. That's the philosophy we want to have in mind is, if possible, have that ball in the field of play. And, especially when the quarterback is sacked or a runner is tackled, the rule of forward progress still applies. We're going to give them every inch that they have earned. And usually when we're able to watch the play again, we see that the runner or ball carrier or quarterback was able to get out of the end zone and into the field of play when they were first contacted. It's only at the point of when they're being driven back do you really see the goal line become more threatened. So know that. And in this case, let's say the defense were to tackle the quarterback or tackle a running back near the goal line. Obviously, they're going to want 2 points, but they're also going to be happy with the result if we put the ball at the half-yard line or 1-yard line, because for them, they've won that play. So knowing that philosophy, it can make officiating this play a little bit easier, meaning we don't have to get too stressed about being right on the goal line to make a ruling, because our philosophy is, if possible, we're going to put that ball outside the end zone. And only when it becomes more obvious that it's a safety, we're going to allow that to make our job a little bit easier, because this is a tough position on the field to officiate with where everyone is starting in their positions.
Dave, you haven't ran this yet, have you?
I have not.
Okay, good.
No,
Okay.
Thanks for asking. You never know with.
Well, the way you were talking,
Mm-hmm.
You said, it appeared as though he was. Well, I said, shit, I didn't see it. Okay.
Yep.
I'm sorry.
Nope. Thanks for asking. But it is a good hint to play the video here. But I wanted to have that in our minds before we watch the play. So we'll let this play through. And there are 2 actually blocks I want us to concentrate on. One is by the running back, And then later on, I believe it's the right tackle that we'll watch here. But first watch the running back on a play like this. And, this is where I should be after the snap. So that's one block to look at. Then you'll see the referee throw a flag on the second block. So we'll watch this a couple times. The running back is our responsibility. We might get help, but probably not. And you'll notice he goes low. And that's something that we have to call because that's always a foul in high school football. Do we need to know if it's at the 3 or the 4? Not necessarily. The important thing there to know it's in the field of play. That's the important ruling that we have to make sure that we're not awarding a safety on that hit. But our eyes are also transitioning to notice where the quarterback is running. And you've got a pretty obvious hold by the lineman is what the referee throws on. So nice job by the referee to transition in front of the quarterback, in front of the play, and go where the point of attack is. You see a very unathletic move by the defender, and that's a good call for offensive holding on this. Something obvious. Everyone who watches this film after the game will understand that's where the foul was. Those are the ones we want to concentrate on. Other questions about reverse mechanics? Yeah.
And Dave, just did you want to speak briefly about where to stand at in the event the ball is on the 10-yard line? As far as standing in the end zone compared to being on the end line. So usually if I have the ball at the 10-yard line, I will stand on the goal line. If it's inside the 5, I go to the end line. I'm not certain, what you do in that situation.
Yeah, no, that's a good question. And some of it is based on style of play. But certainly when the ball is snapped between the 10 and the 15, I will try to stand on the goal line and wider. If the ball is snapped right at the 10, I might be a yard or two deep in the end zone. I rarely line up more shallow than 12 yards deep. But I'm someone who likes to line up 15 yards behind the ball. So that's my normal position. So I'll go up to 12, but I'll definitely go wider in that. So if the ball is right at the 10, I'll probably be a yard or two deep in the end zone. Close enough to know where the goal line is, but also to give myself a perspective I'm somewhat used to.
Right. And then the key is to make sure that you get wide as possible, that you can go so that you can see the action. Jeff, did that answer your question, or did you have any additional question? Yes.
Question I got as a referee. Now, what if the back end line is threatened? Do you then make that move to that end line instead of being in the middle of the end zone?
Absolutely. We're the only ones that will have a view on the end line, and that's our responsibility 100%. So if the quarterback is going to push me back at all, I'm going to get to that end line as soon as possible.
Right, absolutely. And then just for clarity, we were just talking about pre-snap, where we stand at pre-snap. And if in the event the inline is threatened, that's during the snap, and definitely you got to hustle back to get that in line.
Right.
Okay. Each play we have to establish a pre-snap routine, and we can work on that in the future if you need assistance with coming up with a pre-snap routine.
Any other questions relating to reverse goal line mechanics?
Yeah, I have a question. If the ball is from between the goal line, snap between the goal line and the 5-yard line, and we're lined up on the end line, do we want both wing officials going back to the goal line, or is one going to hold the line of scrimmage?
My belief of the high school mechanics are that both officials go back to the goal line, and that the umpire assists with calls involving the line of scrimmage.
Okay. I would just add a comment. You're talking about philosophy and IQ and everything like that. I know for me, you know, when you had mentioned about feeling comfortable keeping any play close to the goal line, philosophically speaking, keep it in the field of play. I also feel really comfortable making that call, especially when I know there's no cameras, especially at the high school level, typically at the goal line, where I don't have to worry like you would in a college game or an NFL game, where it might go under video review. Unless it's a high stakes high school game, you might be on YouTube or something. But yeah, typically there's no camera crew there.
Absolutely. And that's, you know, what we're seeing is the camera that everyone's going to look at from midfield. So, you know, if he's got a foot, if he's got some body parts in the field of play, it's likely the ball is also in the field of play. It's something we can always rely on. And let's now transition to a play going into the goal line and some mechanics and thoughts here.
Pick up.
So this play is from the 6 going in. So we know the line of scrimmage officials, at least in our case, are going to move toward the goal line after the snap. So as a referee, we have to have more on the mind of if the quarterback is going to threaten the line of scrimmage when he throws the ball, we might need to make a ruling. So we definitely have to be aware of where he throws the football. Not necessarily what yard line the line of scrimmage is, and I'll explain to that, but where he throws the yard line from, because we can always run up after the fact to that spot and then check the line of scrimmage. The second part we have to be aware of is if the quarterback throws the ball, maybe out to the flat or out toward the sideline, is we're the ones going to have to make a ruling on, is that a forward or backward pass? So again, let's think about philosophy and how to help with that ruling ahead of time. Is we know our philosophy is that if the quarterback throws the ball to the sideline and it's close, we're not going to award a cheap turnover or a cheap fumble. So we're going to default to, if it's close, a forward pass. Better to make it incomplete than to rule a fumble when it really was forward, or to rule a backward pass when it really was forward. So knowing that, again, if it's close, you're not really able to determine, it's going to be a forward pass unless it becomes obvious that it's backward. And I think when you have the anticipation that the quarterback might throw a ball that's sideways, backward passes become more obvious. They just look different. They look unusual. The quarterback's always throwing the ball forward. So it's kind of amazing, even from our position, 15 yards, or really, I guess, from the quarterback, 10 yards from behind the quarterback, we can kind of tell that's a backward pass. We just have that instinct, that intuition, that something just looks different from all the other passes in the game. So have that in your mind to start. Is you need to know where the quarterback throws the ball from, and you might need to make a ruling forward or backward if they throw on the sideline. So as we watch this play is a challenging play because the quarterback doesn't just drop back and pass.
Of 3 down to the 7.
And that scramble
Baker did the quick clap,
breaks down the play, and we just have to
sideline to see if any
the play.
adjustments want to be made. Williams did switch sides. He will roll to the right. Nothing open, back to the left. Baker still flips it over to Williams. He has Hayes there.
That was not a design pass,
5.
but if it's a pass that we need to rule on. So the question is to you, and there's no right or wrong answer on the Zoom call. If you're the referee, would you rule this a forward or backward pass?
Right. Nothing open, back to the left. Baker still flips it over to Williams. He has Hayes there. Inside.
Backward. A full yard.
Do we all agree? Do we have some differing opinions? And that's fine.
He'll roll to the right. Nothing open, back to the left. Baker still flips it over to Williams. He has Hayes there inside the 5, but outside of the end zone.
This is Gary. I was just going to comment.
Can you mute that?
Yeah, I'm sorry. I was just going to comment. Knowing at the high school level, I don't have instant replay to bail me out. And we always talk about the philosophy of no cheap turnovers. When it's this close, I don't feel I have to have the best eyes. If it falls to the ground, I would likely call it incomplete pass at the high school level. I might not have the perfect position, but I feel the play is close enough where I would feel comfortable in my own skin to call incomplete pass on this play from just talking philosophically.
Great. And, this is a play to kind of think about ahead of time in the off season, because the important part, because the reality is this is close. I mean, we can start drawing arrows and diagrams. The quarterback, he releases the ball from about the 11-yard line, and the receiver, number 15, touches the ball maybe at the 11, maybe at the 11 and a half. It's tough. It's
like
close.
12.
It's tight. Again, it's the release point of the ball from the quarterback's hands to the touch point of the receiver, and the feet of both players can kind of add an illusion here. So there's that part too. We can really get into, is this forward or backwards? That's not the point. The point is are you expecting this as a referee? And when this happens, and if number 15 were to drop the ball, whatever your ruling is going to be fine, as long as you do so confidently and assertively. So if you rule this backwards and you immediately punch backwards, you don't necessarily have to put a bag down, but that certainly does signify to everybody that you've made a ruling. You're gonna live to the next down with your ruling. Otherwise, if you rule this forward and you rule this incomplete pass because you're applying a philosophy of it's close, it's in doubt, and I'd rather do that, and you come in when that ball's on the ground and wave it off with your whistle strong, you've done your job. At the high school level especially. What we want to have here is an assertive, confident call. And we're going to get that if you prepared or anticipated what might happen on this play. But what you don't want to do is let the play go all the way through and then talk to your line of scrimmage officials who probably aren't going to give you much help, and then come up with a ruling a minute or two later. You've kind of lost some credibility. And that's one point I wanted to make on this play is a play like this, it's judgment. So it's not so much important, what exactly is right, but how to make it call confidently and assertively, because that's going to help you with the tough, challenging plays in the game.
And Dave, I think another thing is really take that split second 2 or 3, in other words, see if your line, because a lot of times they'll blow that thing right away, one way or another. If say this was incomplete and he's blowing it and you've got a bag down, then you got an issue. So take a split second to see what your line of scrimmage officials do, because a lot of times they will rule on that right away.
That's an excellent point, Kurt. Thank you for bringing that up. There is nothing wrong with taking a breath before you're ruling. There's nothing wrong with taking that second before you're ruling. Obviously, it gives some space that if maybe a line of scrimmage official does make a ruling, you're not conflicting it. But let your brain process it one time, and that will help you with your confidence. There's nothing wrong with that at all.
Yeah, the only comment I would make on that, if my line of scrimmage officials are doing their job properly, they should be probably at the 2. They should be at the goal line, covering the goal line, and I would kind of question, you know, them making a call. In this case, it would be almost 10 yards out, whether it's forward or backwards. But hey, Dave, but I do have a question.
Not in 7, man.
Well, yeah, the deep wings are going to be on the end line already, and then right, we're inside the 7, and so the line of scrimmage and head linesmen are going to be they're going to have to cover the goal line.
Correct.
Right. So my question, Dave, is out of curiosity, do you when you're going inside or you're going for a touchdown, and the ball's where it is right now at the 6, do you line up as a referee wider like you did in reverse mechanics in a situation like this, since your wing officials will have to cover the goal line?
Yeah, it's a good question, and I don't vary my width. I only vary my width if we're coming out of the end zone.
Okay.
But going in, I'm lining up the same width, same distance. I know I have found if when I miss calls, my initial positioning wasn't right. It was off a little bit, and just getting that same perspective every play helps tremendously about where my eyes need to pick up the point of attack and follow correctly. So I try to stand in the same position every play.
Okay, thanks.
Any other questions about going in? All right, well, I think we have about 20 minutes or so. So we wanted to just kind of open up any other general questions or any other categories that we want to look at plays or find plays to look at today.
Darren, you got a question?
Yes. In some instances with coaches and the sideline, you really don't want to try to flag them, but you want them to be off the field and stay off the field. What are some of the things that you try to say to them or get them to understand that this is a safety issue and things of that nature?
Good question. And, there's a big point of emphasis on the college game this year is that the coaches have to stay off the field. I know that emphasis may not be as supported in high school football at times. However, a philosophy that can still apply is, let's say you do need to talk to a coach and they're on the field or at least off the sideline. The simple thing you can do is not talk to the coach until you yourself are on the sideline. So, I'll run or walk over to the coach depending on the need and tell you, coach, and just say, coach, I'll talk to you, but over here on the sideline, and get them off the field. And doing that also helps kind of slightly bring down their emotions just a bit, but it reinforces, you can talk to us all you want on the sideline. Talk to your sideline officials and you can talk to me when necessary, but it's not going to be on the field in front of everybody to make us look bad.
Right. Okay.
I got just a little suggestion on that. Well, at least something I've done is when you do talk to them about it, if these coaches, are predominantly doing that, you have to go over and when you do say it, try to be as positive as you can. Like, coach, this is a point of emphasis. You get to a state final, you're going to have to make sure you're on this sideline. And, you get in the playoffs, those are types of things. So keep it positive, and then they stop to think, oh, okay, type of, at least I've had a good response that way.
Now for me, I make it accountable for my wing officials to make sure they have stay in communication with the coaches. And then when it's warranted, then I will go and talk to them myself. That's when warranted.
I agree, but just keeping it as positive as you can. That's, I guess, the way I'm looking at it.
All right, so I have sorry, go ahead, Darren, were you done? Okay.
Oh, go ahead. It's fine. Go ahead.
No, go ahead.
I had a follow-up question, but I want to hear what you have to say first.
No, mine is completely different related. Mine is more based off announcements. I wanted to assist with announcements.
Well, also given the the pandemic and all this type of stuff going on, and with social distances, I don't know whether that's still going to occur during this time. Have you all talked about that aspect of the game now?
Yes. So for us, with regards to COVID, a lot has changed, right? As far as flying, the time we have to be at the game, not the game, but yes, the time we have to be at the game, the protocol when we arrive to the stadium, in the event that, we do have to test on Tuesdays, or have our test on Tuesday, Wednesday morning, so that it can ride to the lab and we can have our results before we fly out. So that was a change. As far as eating with a crew, that has changed now. So, when we get to the location, normally, I really can't meet up with anybody on a crew. We have to go to separate rooms and, we have to social distance. This is during the season. A lot has changed from during the season to now because of the vaccination and so forth. So there was a lot of protocols. There was testing on the day of the game as well, just to make sure that we were fine. Once we got to the stadium, there was a lot of protocols and safety measures placed in with regards to chain crews and ball personnel, because we do have interactions with them as well. Also with people that are responsible for TV production. There was a situation where, as though, a positive test came out from one of the Red Hats, and we do have to have a conversation with the Red Hat, before the game. So there was a lot of safety measures put in to protect us, and our assigners did a good job making sure that we were protected. Hopefully, did that answer some of your questions, or do you still have remaining questions with regards to COVID?
No, that's great. I just noted in high school, first of all, the facilities are not as great as you all. You don't have those extra protocols that whether someone has or has not tested, because we don't have testing on a weekly or anything basis. So my concern is going to the facility now and trying to have some kind of conversation with the crew, but at a social distance advantage, but at the same time that these places start looking at having a little bit more disinfected and cleaning atmosphere for us, I guess you could say.
I think that question isn't for us, right? I think that question is directed to someone else. I would say, as far as the crew, make sure that you protect yourself and your family at all times. And that means that you need to social distance and have that conversation while we're sitting in a room, but making sure that you're at least 6 feet apart. Please do so. That means that we don't have to shake hands. There's no shaking hands. There's no fist bumping. If you need to wear a mask, if you believe in wearing a mask, then do so, right? You need to protect yourself and your family first. In the event that you feel as though any environment is not safe, I wouldn't walk into it, right? I mean, because your life and your family is at jeopardy, not anyone else's. So you have to take that into consideration and have that conversation with your assigner prior. You can't just pull up to the game, oh, this isn't safe. You kind of know which locations are safe and not safe. And maybe your assigner can have that conversation with the appropriate school to make sure that you feel comfortable going there. But I always remember your family is safe. I mean, your family and your health is the main concern when it comes to COVID.
That's something that I think your call to the AD to see exactly what they can provide. But we just each brought a chair and made sure we were outside for one last year. And then that way you can stay your 6 feet or whatever. And You know, that was last year. I think the state may come down and tell us some things, hopefully, and maybe the ADs and the state will have some type of, you know, or what do you call it, communication. But I think communicating with the AD and saying, okay, where you have us, because I think showering and stuff and all that's going to be gone for a while. That's just going to be the way it is. But we just made sure we each had a chair and we sat outside. But hopefully in an area that is not, I got fans coming by and everything. And that's something you can communicate when you're email and your call to the AD prior to your game that week. Just one suggestion.
Yeah, thanks, Kurt. That was a good one. Any other concerns?
Yeah, if I can just kind of jump in here for a minute, I'd like to get kind of back on the field with a question. I was very intrigued by John Perry's presentation regarding intentional grounding. What is your, I'll just say, mental checklist when you're back there as the referee, quarterback is under some heavy pressure and he gets rid of the ball? It just really looks bad. But shouldn't your concern be health of the quarterback at first, and then following up any potential calls? You're not trying to drop the flag, even though it may initially look really bad to you. What is your mental process going through in order to not just get it right, but also keep the important flow of the game also?
Right. So remember that intentional grounding is a crew call, right? Because you do need other people to provide information. And you did hit it correct, Jeff, whereas though you stated that your main concern is the safety of that quarterback, whether or not you bring up an interesting conversation, because if you said safety, then was he hit incorrectly, right? You know, and should a foul be thrown for roughing the passer? Or was his arm hit? That's the reason why the ball didn't make it to the line of scrimmage and so forth. But ultimately, intentional grounding is a crew call. You have to do your job first, right? And then second, you bring in your wing official or your deep official and ask for other information. You can say to them, I have the quarterback under duress. I have the quarterback inside the tackle box. I'm not certain what happened to the ball. Can you provide further information? So that's part of the communication aspect, as though where you want to bring other officials involved. And also remember the other officials should have some type of feeling about the play as well, right? You want to encourage conversation with your other officials so that they can bring you the details that you need to make an intentional grounding call. Siegle, anything else?
Hey, Art, if I can just add one comment to that. I mean, you're absolutely right. It's a crew call. You need to get information from other people. If you really want to take your communication on an intentional grounding call to the next level, it's something you want to pregame. You should never have to ask your wing official, was there a receiver in the area? Did the ball get back to the line of scrimmage? That's something you want your wing officials to come to you with. It's like you said, you're worrying about what happened to the quarterback because he's under duress, he's under heavy pressure. Does he get taken to the ground? Does he get taken to the ground by a foul? Was his arm hit? You're going to follow him all the way to the ground and then some. And you should never have to then look up, bring your wing official over and say, okay, what happened to the ball? They should be coming to you with that information. And it's just something you got to talk about every week and you know, get it into everyone's head. That's just part of the expectation when you have, if a ball goes out into the flat and there's nobody there, you need to come in and tell me there was nobody there, the ball got back to the line of scrimmage. You'll put together the rest of the puzzle and decide whether there's grounding or not. I mean, what you heard John say this morning is that his back judge, Tony Sterator, came to him with the information. John's not thinking, I mean, it's a pass that goes straight downfield. John's not thinking intentional grounding. He's thinking, I got a quarterback that's under pressure. His back judge comes to him. And that's the way that crew call gets handled in a way that keeps the game flowing.
Yeah, I thought that was a really great point. Thank you.
And the last part I'll just add to all of that is, because of this communication and because it is a crew call, this is a flag that is thrown after the play. And in some cases, well after the play. You know, perhaps 10, 20 years ago, we had the mindset of this was our call and we had to throw the flag quickly after the throw. Not anymore. Now, often you'll see this flag come out 30 seconds or more after the down is over, and that's acceptable. And that might be something to, again, just encourage the rest of the crew. That's how this call is made. It's well after the play.
Remember, your job as referee is that spot of where the throw was from. That's where your communication is going to come with the others.
Jim, hopefully that answers your question. And then I think, Jamal, you had a question as well.
I do. This question really is for anyone who has something to add. I think we all kind of know and saw Ron's very famous 1 minute penalty, multiple foul, where he kind of talked about all the fouls that happened during the play. Do you all have a process when going through like multiple foul scenarios and just kind of how you're thinking about either compartmentalizing it or announcing it, or I guess any best tips for a young referee in terms of making sure you're able to communicate multiple foul situations that you've all experienced?
Ryan, did you want to answer that one first?
Yeah, we cheat. So here's what I mean by we cheat. So I'm pretty good at 2 numbers. I'm decent at 3. You give me more than 3 numbers, I got a problem. And I'll just, I'll walk through what happened in that play, because it's actually a great lesson in crew communication, because that announcement, the referee, I mean, it's like a lot of what we do as referees. The referee gets the camera time, but that was a crew announcement. We had fouls everywhere. We had fouls during the play. We had fouls after the play. And what I don't remember what may or may not have shown up on camera is, my side judge was writing down numbers. He pulled out his game card and he's writing down numbers. This is what we got. This is the foul that we got on that player. And we stuck with the conversation. It felt like we were out there for an hour and a half, just talking through it. But you got to stick with the conversation until you got all the information. Efficient penalty administration does not necessarily mean doing it as fast as possible. It means doing it once and doing it the right way the first time, which means you need to get all the information at once, gather it all up, sort it all out before you turn on the microphone. Once we got all the information, we know who fouled, what the fouls were. We had to talk to the Miami head coach to figure out what he wanted to do with the 2 fouls that happened during the play. We knew who we were going to eject. And then what most referees do is they have one person stand sort of in front and off to the side, so they're out of camera range. And when the referee flips on the microphone and starts making the announcement, that person is feeding him numbers and fouls. So once I get past the first 2 or 3, my side judge is okay, now I've got a kick catch interference, and a illegal blindside block. I'm good with those two. I figured out. Now I got to get to the unnecessary roughness, the unsportsmanlike, the injections. He's just feeding me numbers. And as he feeds it to me, I give the foul, who it's on, and then announce all the objections. And he doesn't get nearly the credit that he deserves for being part of that announcement, and the crew doesn't get the credit that they deserve for bringing in all the information and helping us all sort it out. But that's how you do that. If you got more than a couple, and you talk about this during the pregame. Okay, if I need if I'm going to need help on multiple numbers, you stand here and feed me the numbers as I need it. Make sure you tell your crew when they're reporting fouls to you. Don't leave me. Don't run up to me and say I got pass interference number 23 and then run off down the field. Now this is your flag. You stay right here until we get it. Make sure we get it sorted out, because I might need help on this later on. If you give me more than 2 or 3 numbers, I might forget a number. So stick around until we get it all sorted out, and just have somebody to feed you the information if you've got multiple fouls where you're not sure you're going to remember all the numbers.
Yeah, just so everybody knows, Ron is part of a YouTube video where he remembered 5 or 6 fouls. The announcers were saying, heck, I can't remember what I had for dinner. And they couldn't believe how you remembered all the penalties. It was a crazy play. I can't even remember the video, but you were a YouTube video phenom, sir. So kudos to you. Also, just to let Jamal know, Jerry Markbright put together a do's and don'ts about making announcements. If you reach out to Kendall Sherman, I have a PDF file I could send to you on that that I think would be really helpful in how to announce penalties. But but I thought I'd share that with everyone.
Jerry is the guru of penalty announcements. He taught just about anybody that's gone through the Mid-American, the Big Ten, the Missouri Valley, and most of the NFL officials how to announce, how to make announcements. If there's something out there that if Jerry's put something together and put it out there, it's definitely worth taking a look at.
Especially, like, I can't remember who said it, but the one that said they have a cadence that they have their crew do when they come in with a penalty, so that they're all doing it the same way and in a progression. I think that was key. I wanted to make sure I got that information in front of, in paper form, to remember. But having your crew do it a cadence the same, so they're repeating it the same way when they come in. And not only that, they're showing you the sign. I tell them, and I think AJ, who's on our crew, when he refereed Haddock, he said, "Don't come in and tell me a penalty unless you know what the sign is for it." So that's just another weird, because you've got a lot going through your mind. You got to hear the penalty, you got to make sure you do the right sign, and you got to verbalize that to the crowd. So anyhow, but I like that. Whoever that was that had the cadence, I really would like to see that again. So
yeah, I'll send it over to everyone, and then also just as a final thing as well is that each week I practice. I do a practice test where though I practice my announcements. I'm not certain if you guys are in the habit of doing that, but I start off with the basic ones: false start, holding, things like that. And I think Ron also runs a group as well. But we practice those announcements every single day so that we are able to communicate that effectively when time permits. I'll show you an example real quick before we have to go back to the main session of an example of one of the tests that I do. Here's an example of an announcement test. So it's a quick and easy one. So it's a false start one. I'll practice that in the mirror, make sure that I say it correctly, make sure that my presence is good, so that when I'm on TV or when I'm speaking to the audience, it's effective and efficient, and most importantly, smooth. So I have several scenarios. I can send these out to you as well, but I take a different test, or I practice these each probably 2 or 3 a week.
Thank you all.
Good. Yeah. Thank you.
No problem.
Have a great day. Good efforts by everybody.
Okay. And I think that's it. It's 12:40. I do believe we have to go back to the main session. Is that accurate?
Yes.
Yes, I believe so.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you, everyone. And I will make sure you have our contact information if you need to contact us as well.
Thank you very much, everyone.
Thanks,
Thank you,
Art.
guys.
Thanks, Dave.
So I'm gonna end this session. We'll jump to the big session. In I think it started in 10 minutes, but I'm gonna open it up now so folks can join in. Before my man. All right, man. I'll see y'all in a few. All right.
All right.